Okay, right, so quads. Now, complex muscle group, quite a lot going in there. Obviously, quad refers to four muscles, but we also have hip flexors, leg abductors, various other muscles tying into this area. Now, one of the biggest issues with training quads is people just don't train them hard enough. If you want to know if you're one of them people, ask yourself this question. When's the last time you failed squatting? When's the last time you failed leg press? Don't get me wrong, squatting and leg press are major compound movements. They take a lot out of you physically and mentally. And getting underneath a big weight and going to failure is quite frankly quite scary. The injury potential is great, particularly with something like a squat, because you've got this vision of the weight crushing you. But if you're in a rack, you've got crash bars, so the weight's not going to crush you. If you're in a leg press, you've normally got bump stops, so again, the weight's not going to crush you. But this fear does prevent a lot of people from training legs to failure. And like I say, ask yourself when was the last time you've trained quads to failure. And ask yourself when the last time you trained chest to failure, or biceps or triceps to failure. And I think you'll find that the smaller groups, you do it quite a lot. The bigger groups, very rarely at all, if at all. So there's your first question to ask yourself. If you're not training quads to failure, then straight away, you ain't training hard enough. Simple as. Now, several aspects. The quad works, really, its main function is to lift the lower leg. So a leg extension works the quad directly. But obviously, we go throw into this movement stuff like glutes, hip flexors, and everything else. So compound movements like squat and leg press bring other muscles into play. And there is some, brain fart. There is some extra activation, shall I say, from a squat. Because you've now got movement at the knee joint and you've now got movement at the hip joint. So it puts the whole muscle under more tension and more stress. Biggest issues, generally speaking, is foot placing, foot position. Especially with a leg extension, I'm naturally pigeon toe, so my right foot naturally turns in. Great, I can move a lot of power, but isn't really the best for muscle mass generation. Tends to throw everything onto my outer quad area. So I've got to really focus when I do leg extension to make sure I've got at least a neutral foot position, if not slightly splayed. Now the age-old question, squats. Do you go arse to grass? Well, yes and no. And what I mean by that is that if you can go arse to grass, you do. But your range is limited by your hip and hamstring flexibility, or your posterior chain flexibility. So if you're going down in the squat and your arse starts to tuck under, then that's not healthy. And that's the point, that's the limit point of your range. Then you need to work on improving your hamstring and hip flexibility so you can get lower by maintaining a neutral spine. But if you can't, then that is the point and limit of your range. So you go to what is the limit of your current range. But going deep won't knacker your knees. That's just bullshit. Bouncing out of the hole will knacker your knees. And partial reps will knacker your knees. And I'll explain why. The kneecap floats over the joint. As you go down and you lower, the kneecap connects with the joint and spreads the load evenly around the joint. But as you go higher, the points of contact are minimal. So all the tension is going through those small points of contact. So it's a bit like the difference between a fat bird wearing stilettos on a wooden floor and a fat bird wearing plimsolls on a wooden floor. Plimsolls being the full range and therefore full kneecap engagement, and the stilettos being the partials, which means all the weight goes through one finite point. The stiletto does damage. The other thing is, the tension on that joint as you break that rep and then start to drive back up in a partial motion puts even more pressure on the knee. So there you go. Again, like everything else, you want to work over the fullest range. Now, taking a squat, for example, chest up, neutral spine. I prefer the bar lower down my back, across my rear delt, sort of a bit like powerlifting style. But it depends on your own body mechanics. It depends on how long your femur is and how long your torso is as to where you get the bar position. But the point is that when you look from the side, that bar should cut midway through your thigh and midway through your foot. If it's going forward towards the knee, you're leaning into the squat too much and you're setting yourself up for an injury. Okay? And the load and pressure through the foot should be evenly dispersed through the foot. You shouldn't be going up on the balls of your feet. It should be evenly dispersed through the heel and the foot. Your feet should be planted solid. They shouldn't be shifting and moving throughout the range. If you're getting feet that start to lift when you go down or up, then you need to work on your flexibility. Now, some will say your knees shouldn't travel over your toes. And in general, yes, that is correct. But it all spends down to your limb lengths. For some people, that's just not possible to not do because their limbs are so long. So it depends on you as an individual as to how you work out. If you've got a relatively short torso and relatively long limbs, chances are your knees are going to travel over your toes. Vice versa, if you've got relatively short limbs and a long torso, you're going to have problems with bar position, and probably generally you have to have the bar quite low down on your back. There's nothing wrong with a high bar squat, as long as you track that range, as I've said, from the sides of the bar cutting through your thigh and through your midfoot. What stance width? Well, the wider go, the more you can engage interior muscles like your leg abductors and such like. The narrower you go, the more you're going to throw load onto the outside. However, foot positioning angle will alter this as well. The way I've always set a squat stance is to squat down, jump up, and wherever you land, that's your foot placement. That's the distance between your foot, because that's naturally where your feet are going to sit for your power. With squatting, doesn't matter how low your head goes, doesn't matter how low the bar goes, it's how low your fucking arse goes. The amount of people I see to get just above parallel and then just lean forward and think they're going deep because the stomach's touching the quads. No, you're not. You're just doing a fucking good morning with the bar. When you start that squat, you drive your hip forward and you get under that bar to give yourself the power. You're pushing the bar away from the floor and you're pushing it back almost. And don't be scared of failing. You're in a cage, you're in a squat rack. Let the frame take the work. Leg press, higher up, more hamstrings and glutes. Lower down, more quads. Lower down, more stress on the knee. So bear that in mind as well. I tend to go neutrally in the middle. And obviously I go wide enough to get my knees around my fat gut. Otherwise the rep range is shit. And the biggest thing I see on leg press is short range. It's people just doing half reps. They don't want to go deep. But same again, if your spine's starting to roll out the seat at the bottom, that's dangerous. It's going to put undue pressure on your lower back. And your flexibility is just not there. So focus on keeping your arse planted deep in the seat and make your hip flexation work better for you. Leg extension. Good. Simple isolation movement for quads. Feet need to be generally, I wouldn't turn in, a lot of stress on the knee. I'd go neutral or slightly wider. Again, don't bounce. Don't jar at the top of the movement with the knee. Nice smooth delivery, squeeze at the top and smooth delivery back down again. But try and get on a machine that gives you a decent stretch at the bottom. Unfortunately, a lot of leg extensions don't. A lot of leg extensions are quite restrictive at the bottom of the movement in the sense that it's quite short range and they don't go far enough back. Excuse me. If you're training quads properly, you should be fucked afterwards. They should wipe you out because it is a hard muscle group. Now, there's a plethora of exercises you can do. Lunges, hack squats, sissy squats, leg press, various forms, vertical leg press, regular squats, front squats, you know, split squats, leg extension. You can go on and on and on. There's loads of leg exercises. Generally, I pick 3, 5 to 6 sets for each exercise, but go to failure. If you're doing set after set after set after set, you're just not working hard enough. Rep range, a lot favour higher rep ranges of the 12 to 15s. Personally, I work in the 6 to 8 range, but I do throw a couple of high rep sets in. And it doesn't matter what exercise, squats, leg press, legs and either. I'll throw a couple of high rep sets in at the end of the work on that exercise. But generally I keep it 6 to 8. Nice and slow and controlled, good range and focus on the movement. When you squat, drive with the glute as well. Squeeze your glutes up. You know, a big mistake I made for a lot of years was I was very quad dominant in my squat. My knees came a long way over my toes. I didn't really engage my glutes very well, even though I squatted deep. I mean, I still do put my ass on my heels on every rep. Fine, I didn't see it being an issue. I was building big quads. I wasn't building glutes, and I ended up with a massive muscular imbalance, which actually was what started all my back problems. Because load was going into my back instead of my glutes. So it's something I've had to work very hard to think. You want to be working your glutes, you want in a squat or a leg press, you want that overall development. I find V-squat machines are very, very good for glute activation. Head up, get your airways up, keep your head up, obviously. Don't go for weight all the time. Get it right, get the form right, get the movement right. Then start looking for weight. You know? And lock in on a squat. Pull that bar down, get tight under it. Chest lift, get comfortable. If it takes weeks to just get comfortable with the exercise, then take that time to get it right. You don't want to build on a poor foundation. But let's say, legs should fuck you, legs should wipe you out. I mean, put it this way, I can't train calves, quads and hamstrings together. It's just too much. I physically can't deal it. So I separate my legs. I do quads on one day, hamstrings on another and calves on another. And if you're training them hard enough, I don't think you can honestly sit there and say that you've given everything your all. If you train quads hard enough, you're not going to get everything into your hamstrings. You train hamstrings hard enough, you're not going to get everything into your quads or calves. You know? So personally, I think this will be split. You wouldn't chain chest, back and shoulders together. So why do you do it with quads? Why do you do it with legs? Doesn't make sense. And then people are wondering why the leg development's behind. You push hard, you push to failure, and your legs will explode. You don't need to be fancy. The basics will do the work, as long as you put the effort in. Keep them controlled. Progress steadily, but train to failure. Work. I can't stress that enough. It's the biggest failing that people have in leg work. And if you're worried about it and it scares you, get a weight that you are confident with on a squat and just squat until you fail. And then once you've failed, you'll realise it ain't that bad a thing. And what were you scared of in the first place? It's very, very mental, his legs. We have our brains don't like going into such an uncomfortable place, which legs do deliver. So they will bring up, I've done it myself, come up with all sorts of shitty excuses as to why not to push hard on legs. And truthfully, that's all they are, excuses. The biggest single issue with leg development is people just don't train them or train them hard enough. Simple as that. And you've got to train everything equally. If you want a balanced physique and you don't want long-term issues with your muscularity, then you need to make sure that your quads and your hamstrings are all trained to balance. Exercises, like I said, there's thousands. And I'll cover individual exercises in the next series of videos after we've done these. Breathing. That's another thing people tend to get wrong. Just be natural with it. And this is where core strength comes in massively. Your ab wall is your big supporter when you're squatting or you're leg pressing. So you need to make sure it activates correctly. Now, if you're going to wear a belt, that's fine. Personally, I don't like them, but that's nothing. That's just me. But don't have it that fucking tight that you can't even activate your core. There should be enough room so that you can blow your stomach out and blow your ab wall against it, giving you stability. Get your core strong and your squatting and your leg pressing will massively improve. It is a key factor of keeping you upright. It's not lower back that generally makes you fall forward in a squat. It's weak core. Get that developed, get that strong. And you'll find your basic compound moves, including deadlift and all the rest, will improve if you improve your core strength. And I think that's really it. Anything more, I'm just going to be yabbiting on again. So, recap: slow, controlled, deep within range, to the range that your body flexibility will allow. If that range is short, then work on it. Work on your flexibility, improve flexibility. Oh yeah, another tip. If you're getting a lot of lower back pumps when you're squatting or you're training legs, 5 grams of taurine and improve your hamstring flexibility. Because generally speaking, that's because your hamstrings are tight and that's what's causing the back pumps. So get your hamstring flexibility improved, get them loosened off, and you'll find the back pumps during legs will go. Okay? And train hard. That's it. Right, see you next week for hamstrings.